Hey there. Tonight's journey takes us somewhere sweaty, muddy, and full of disappointment. We're heading to the Kokoda Track, circa 1942, where you'll quickly discover that being sent there wasn't an honour. It was a sentence. Not the kind that gets you a medal, the kind that gets you an infection, a 1,000-yard stare, and a lifelong grudge against the concept of tropical deployment. So, before we start, maybe toss a like and subscribe if listening to military trauma history whispered in a sarcastic tone helps you sleep at night. Let me know in the comments if your grandfather ever muttered something vague and haunted about Papua New Guinea. Chances are he was there. And if he was, he didn't want to talk about it. And by the end of this, you'll understand exactly why. Dim the lights. Maybe grab a blanket that hasn't been soaked in rainwater and human regret. Let the fan hum. Let your muscles relax. And let's drop you into a scenario so grim you'll be grateful for your modern pillow and lack of jungle ulcers. Because now, you're no longer in a bedroom. You've just been deployed. You're standing in Port Moresby, 1942. It's hot. It's humid. And the Kokoda Track is waiting to ruin your week, your body, and your belief in competent logistics. Congratulations, you've been volunteered. Or maybe you just had the bad luck of being fit, young, and not quite clever enough to dodge the draft. Either way, you're here now. New Guinea, 1942. A place so humid that your sweat sweats, and so remote that maps sort of shrug in its direction. You're part of the Australian militia, or maybe the AIF if you're lucky, or unlucky enough to be considered regular army. The Kokoda Track is your destination. 70 miles of mud, mountains, and misery. You haven't even started climbing yet, and already you're questioning your life choices. The first thing you notice? The heat, not the dry kind. This is wet heat, moist, choking, tropical saturation. You don't sweat so much as dissolve. Your uniform is already soaked through, clinging to you like a mouldy towel someone forgot in a gym bag. You try to adjust your kit, but your gear's already digging into your shoulders like angry toddlers with knives. The rifle feels heavier than it should. That's because it is. And you'll be dragging it up and down terrain that hates you personally. Now look up. That's the Owen Stanley Range. Sharp, green, endless. The trail winds straight through it, carved into the mud by decades of feet that didn't enjoy the walk either. No roads, no vehicles. Just a footpath used by locals, and now a strategic necessity, because apparently someone in an office decided this jungle trail was a great place to fight the Japanese. You begin the ascent. There's no real path, just alternating patches of wet roots, ankle-deep mud, and rock outcrops slick with moss and regret. Every step feels like hauling your own coffin uphill. Slipping is inevitable. So is swearing. You're surrounded by men trying not to cry, trying not to fall, trying not to vomit from the combination of heat, motion, and the smell of unwashed everything. Welcome to jungle warfare. It's not just uncomfortable, it's demoralizing. Nothing is dry. Not your socks, not your food, not your will to live. Rain falls with the enthusiasm of a monsoon and the precision of a broken fire hose. It doesn't drizzle here, it assaults. Within minutes, you're soaked through, boots squelching, skin pruning. And you're only on day one. There are no showers, no real shelter. You sleep in trenches or under whatever tarp you haven't already lost to the elements. The ground is never flat. You're either sliding down or clawing up, trying not to lose your footing or your rifle. Nights bring their own joys. Insects the size of coins, buzzing close enough to hum the national anthem in your ear, and frogs that scream like something's being murdered. Because sometimes something is. And then there's the smell, a mix of wet canvas, jungle rot, and human suffering. No one smells good. You all reek. You can't tell if that's foot fungus, decaying rations, or the guy next to you who stopped changing socks sometime around last Thursday. Not that there are extra socks. Your pack's too heavy for anything extra. You're carrying bare essentials. A rifle, some ammo, one change of clothes if you're lucky, a mess tin, and a week's supply of food that's somehow already attracting flies. Your boots? Not jungle boots. They weren't designed for this. They're designed for nice, flat deserts. So naturally, you wear them through swamp, over razor-sharp roots, across makeshift bridges that feel more like hopeful suggestions than engineering. Within hours, your feet are blistered. By day 2, they're bleeding. By the end of the week, they're 2 shriveled, infected science experiments that make you consider walking barefoot. Well, at least then you wouldn't have to smell your own socks fermenting in real time. No one's talking much. Everyone's too tired, too hungry, or too focused on not collapsing. The guy in front of you just fell face first into the mud and isn't getting up. Not because he's hurt, because he's done. His body gave up 5 hours ago, but he's only admitting it now. The jungle was alive, by the way. Not in a mystical sense, just in the sense that everything here wants to bite, sting, or infect you. Leeches drop from trees and latch onto your neck like tiny vampires. You don't notice until you see the blood running down your shirt. Ants swarm your kit if you stop moving for more than a minute. Mosquitoes ignore your repellent like it's a polite suggestion, and the local wildlife occasionally screams in the dark just to remind you you're not alone. You try to eat. Maybe it's bully beef from a tin. Maybe it's dried biscuits that have been in the storage since last war. Whatever it is, it tastes like cardboard, looks like sadness, and digests like gravel. You chew in silence while a cloud of flies buzz around your face, and some poor bastard dry heaves into a nearby bush because his stomach's already surrendered. Water is another issue. You can't just drink from the stream unless you like playing intestinal roulette. So you purify it with tablets that make it taste like pool chemicals, or boil it over a tiny campfire that keeps going out, because nothing dry exists here. Ever. You're constantly thirsty. Not regular thirsty. Deep, aching, primal thirsty. Your body's leaking fluid faster than you can replace it, and no one wants to be the guy who runs out of water 3 days in, so you sip sparingly. Too sparingly. Then you get dizzy. Then you sit down. Then someone tells you to get up because we're still 10 kilometers away from the next rest point, and the Japanese might be anywhere. Yes, them. The whole reason you're here. The enemy is out there in the trees, probably watching. They move faster than you. Fight better in this terrain. They've been doing it longer. Their supply lines are shorter. Their uniforms are made for the jungle. Yours are made for marching in a parade back in Melbourne. There's no real front line, just scattered skirmishes, ambushes, a few bursts of gunfire in the distance that make everyone stop breathing, then silence, then the slow realization that the guy who was walking 5 meters ahead of you is now lying face down with half his leg missing. No heroism, no glory, just blood on the ferns and someone shouting for a stretcher that's never coming. You move on because you have to. There's no time for mourning, no strength for ceremony. You can't even bury the body properly. Too much mud, too little time, too many mosquitoes already gathering. So you leave a helmet on a stick, say nothing, and keep marching. Rest doesn't come. Not really. You get an hour here, half an hour there, curled up under your poncho trying to sleep through the wet chill of jungle night. Your clothes never dry. Your skin is a breeding ground for rashes and fungus. You itch everywhere. You scratch until you bleed. Then the cuts get infected. Then the fever starts. And when you do manage to drift off for 5 minutes, something wakes you. Usually a scream, or the sound of a tree branch snapping under someone's boot, or your own bladder reminding you that you haven't urinated in 12 hours because your body is too busy conserving liquid like a camel in hell. You think about home, about beds, clean sheets, showers with actual pressure, coffee that doesn't come out of a tin labelled emergency use only. You wonder if people back home have any idea what this is like. They don't. They can't. Letters arrive weeks late, if at all. Some aren't even legible anymore, smudged with water damage and mildew. But you keep them. Even when they reek like jungle rot, because it's the only thing that still smells like paper and hope. Morale isn't a straight line. Some guys stay chipper for weeks, cracking jokes through ulcers and gunfights. Others break on day 2, staring blankly into the distance, answering questions with half nods and dead eyes. You try to be one of the former, but it's hard to be funny when you're carrying a pack heavier than your sense of optimism, and your feet feel like bruised sausages held together by tape and denial. Command tells you it's vital, strategic, essential to stop the Japanese from taking Port Moresby. That if they get through, Australia's next. That you're the line in the jungle sand. But out here, none of that matters. Not when your stomach's empty, your gun's jammed, and your friend hasn't spoken in 36 hours. You think about quitting, but there's nowhere to go. There's no evac point. No, sorry, I'm done button. You can't just walk off the track. The only way out is forward, through the vines, the blood, the rain, the bodies. Step by miserable step. And that's just the first part of your welcome. The jungle isn't done with you. Not by a long shot. You'd think before dumping you into a jungle death march with a rifle and half a can of bully beef, someone might have prepared you. Maybe shown you a jungle, or a mountain, or a blister. But no. Basic training was basic in name, and even more basic in execution. Think of it as a loosely organised camping trip. If the camp counsellors were yelling, the tents were falling apart, and no one packed bug spray or common sense. Your first exposure to the concept of training probably took place on flat, dry Australian soil. You were taught to march in lines, clean a rifle, salute an officer, and maybe dig a neat little trench in terrain that didn't try to eat your shovel. You learned how to handle a gas mask you'd never need, fold your clothes with military precision, and possibly pitch a canvas tent on a cricket field. No one mentioned the part where you'd be climbing vertical slopes in ankle-deep mud with 50 pounds of supplies strapped to your back. No one explained how to shoot while leeches crawled up your thighs, or how to stay alert when your eyelids were sticky from sweat and 2 days without sleep. Jungle warfare wasn't on the syllabus, swamp rot wasn't on the reading list, and the only thing you practiced more than drilling was boredom. They gave you a rifle, yes, the Lee Enfield, a solid weapon, if you didn't mind it jamming when soaked, rusting when ignored for 10 minutes, and weighing slightly more than your enthusiasm. You learned how to take it apart and put it back together again in under a minute. What they didn't cover? How to do that while under fire, in the rain, while your hands are shaking from fatigue and your trigger finger is bleeding from a mosquito bite you scratched until it scabbed. Then there was physical fitness. They had you run, do push-ups, crawl under barbed wire. It felt tough at the time, but that was back when tough meant jumping into a sandpit and doing sit-ups in a controlled environment with a nice water break. Nobody tested you on what would happen after 10 hours of hauling a full kit through vertical jungle trails while your ankles turned to pudding. No obstacle course prepared you for bridges made from rotting vines or cliffs disguised as paths. The instructors barked about discipline, posture, uniforms. They talked about keeping your boots polished, as if shine mattered more than durability. Newsflash. In Papua New Guinea, your boots don't shine, they squelch. They fill with water and become makeshift aquariums for fungal colonies. If you wore the wrong size, too bad. Sizing wasn't flexible. You got what they handed you and learned to make your toes shorter. Food rations were another theoretical concept. During training, you might have been issued tins of meat and biscuits. You were shown how to use a mess kit, light a cooking fire, and pretend it tasted all right. What no one mentioned was that in the jungle, you'd be eating cold, half-open tins with a bayonet because your can opener broke on day 3. No one warned you that mould would appear before hunger left, that weevils would beat you to the meal, or that hunger itself wasn't a sharp pain. It was a dull, hollow ache that slowly replaced your personality. Medical training, limited to, if you get shot, yell loudly. Maybe you were shown how to apply a field dressing to a wound the size of a playing card. But what about jungle ulcers, trench foot, fevers that make your teeth rattle and your vision blur? You didn't learn to recognise gangrene until it showed up on someone's leg. And by then, it was more educational than useful. Navigation? Another beautiful myth. You were told how to use a compass, sure. Maybe even handed a map at one point. But jungle navigation isn't about bearings and landmarks. It's about crawling through a sea of green where everything looks identical and nothing stays dry long enough to mark. The canopy blocks the sun. The terrain shifts after every rain. Paths turn into rivers. Rivers vanish. If someone tells you, just follow the track, they might as well tell you to follow a hallucination. The only reliable landmark is your own footprints, and even those fill with water before you can look back. Teamwork was emphasised in training. You were told to trust your mates, rely on the man beside you, work as a unit. And sure, you tried, until someone collapsed from heat stroke. Until someone went missing in the night. Until orders changed and no one knew who was in charge anymore. Then it was every man doing his best to survive without making eye contact, because you couldn't afford to carry guilt along with your rifle. And let's not forget the mental prep. Oh wait, there wasn't any. Nobody pulled you aside and said, "Listen, mate, there'll be a moment when you realise you might not come back. You'll hear your own breath in the dark and wonder if it's your last. You'll see your friend fall and know you can't stop to help. And you'll feel something inside you crack." That speech didn't happen. Instead, they gave you a uniform, a weapon, and a few weeks of shouting. Then they shoved you onto a boat and called it service. Some of the blokes you trained with didn't even make it to the front. They cracked before the jungle had its say, collapsed on the boat, got pulled off the line, disappeared into field hospitals with nervous exhaustion, and came back different. Or didn't come back at all. You didn't ask. If they weren't there the next morning, they didn't exist anymore. Discipline was supposed to be your armour, but it turns out discipline doesn't stop dysentery, doesn't hold your guts in when a grenade goes off nearby, doesn't make you brave when fear has soaked into your bones. The training officer who told you to hold the line wasn't standing knee-deep in mud when the line started dissolving. He wasn't the one trying to shoot a rifle with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. There's also the matter of information, or lack of it. You weren't told much about the Japanese. Maybe a briefing or two. Vague, general. Not the part where they were battle-hardened, well-prepared, and moving fast through the jungle with machetes and better boots. Nobody told you they knew the terrain better than your own officers, that they didn't just fight, they adapted, and they were good at it. What did they tell you? That it was your duty, that you were defending Australia, that this track, this barely functional goat trail through a vertical swamp, was the key to stopping the invasion. And maybe that was true. But they didn't say how many of you wouldn't make it. How many would die of disease, exhaustion, infection. How many would live, but wish they hadn't. So you keep going. Not because training made you ready, but because stopping isn't an option. There's no truck waiting to pick you up. No base camp with medics and hot food. Just jungle ahead, Japanese waiting, and the memory of everything training forgot to teach you. You're learning on the job now. Every mistake costs blood. Every lesson comes too late. And the jungle doesn't accept excuses. Only bodies. And you're still just getting started. You've made it a few days in. Your pack is lighter now, not because the trail got easier, but because you've either eaten half your rations, thrown out anything that wasn't essential, or lost something while sliding down a slope you swear wasn't there 5 minutes ago. Your boots are officially beyond repair. Your socks have fused with your feet. And now you're beginning to understand a hard truth. This isn't a battlefield. It's a death trap with vines. Let's talk about the jungle. The brochures never mention the part where everything's alive and most of it wants you dead. Welcome to Papua New Guinea, lush, green and beautiful from a distance. Up close, it's a rotting, festering maze of roots, mud, and things that squirm when you touch them. Every step is a gamble. Every branch a liar. That sturdy-looking vine? Hope you didn't lean on it, because now you're tumbling 6 feet down into a pit of wet leaves and panic. You try to move forward, but the track is less of a path and more of a cruel rumour passed down by exhausted men. The mud grabs your boots like it's trying to keep you forever. Slopes become slides. Roots twist underfoot like sabotage. Fallen trees block the way, so you crawl, climb, swear, and then do it all over again 5 minutes later. You're not walking through the jungle, you're negotiating with it, and it doesn't care that you're tired. The humidity is biblical. You don't sweat, you leak. Your uniform is permanently damp, clinging to your body like a swampy second skin. It hasn't dried in days. It won't dry. There is no dry. You start to forget what dry ever felt like. Everything smells like mildew and despair. Your own body odour has evolved. It's now a fully sentient force trying to escape the jungle before you do. Sleep doesn't help. Not that you're getting any. Even when you collapse into the mud and try to shut your eyes, the jungle doesn't shut up. There's no silence here. Just endless background noise. Chirps, clicks, distant howls. Buzzing that might be insects or might be the onset of malaria-induced hallucinations. If you do fall asleep, something inevitably wakes you. A leech in your ear. A rat chewing on a ration tin. A nightmare about the last ambush. Let's talk about the bugs. You knew they existed. You just didn't know how personal they'd get. Mosquitoes are everywhere, constant, aggressive, and immune to whatever pathetic excuse for repellent you were issued. They bite through fabric. They bite through hope. You slap your arm so often you start bruising from self-defense. At some point, you just give up and let them feed. You're too tired to care. And the leeches. No one warns you how psychologically disturbing it is to pull one of those things off your ankle and realise it's been drinking your blood for an hour. They don't hurt. That's the worst part. You don't notice until you see a red streak running down your leg, or until the guy next to you points it out with a horrified grunt. They live in the mud, the trees, the puddles, and they are relentless. You become skilled at burning them off with the tip of a cigarette, or whatever's left of one. By the time you flick the thing away, another one's already attached to your thigh. Then there's the terrain itself. Steep inclines that never end, descents that feel like you're rappelling down a waterfall with nothing but a rifle and a string of regrets. You fall. Everyone falls. Some laugh it off. Some don't get back up right away. Some don't get back up at all. There's no safety rail, no warning sign, just a wet jungle slope, and the occasional human bone someone forgot to bury. Water is technically everywhere. Streams, puddles, dripping leaves. But that doesn't mean it's safe. Everything you drink has to be purified or boiled, which means you're either swallowing chlorine-tasting soup or hoping the last guy who used the fire didn't drop his sock into the pot. If you drink straight from the river, congratulations. You're gambling with dysentery, typhoid, or any number of gastrointestinal nightmares, and you'll lose. Everyone does eventually. The wildlife isn't much better. You don't see most of it, which somehow makes it worse. You hear rustling, you hear distant shrieks, you feel eyes. Occasionally a snake appears. More often it doesn't, but you step just a little more carefully for the rest of the day, wondering how many close calls you've already had. Spiders the size of your palm drop down from above. You've stopped reacting. One crawled across your chest yesterday and you just let it go. You're that tired. If you're not wet, you're sunburnt. If you're not sunburnt, you're shivering. The jungle doesn't just hurt you, it confuses you. 1 minute you're baking under a crack in the canopy, the next you're soaked again and wondering if this fever is from heat, cold, or the thing that bit you yesterday. There's no relief, just weather. Relentless or shifting, mocking weather. The only shade you get is from the canopy above, dense and oppressive. No breeze reaches you. It traps the heat. It traps the smell. When the rain comes, and it always does, it hits the leaves first, then drips down in random, miserable bursts that soak your face just when you thought you might be dry enough to blink without stinging. You don't walk in straight lines anymore. The jungle bends you. You duck under branches. You step over logs. You wade through waist-deep rivers that feel like the world's dirtiest bath. There's no rhythm, no pace. You move like an animal, half stooped, half crawling, focused only on what's immediately in front of you. Every hour feels like a day. Every day blends into the next. And somewhere in all of this, you remember, this isn't just a hike. You're at war. The enemy is out there, equally miserable, possibly better trained, definitely more familiar with the terrain. At any moment, shots could ring out. An ambush could come. And when it does, you'll be lying face down in the same mud you've been sleeping in, trying to fire a rifle that doesn't like moisture, while aiming through eyes burning from sweat and smoke. The jungle doesn't take sides. It just hates both of you. time loses meaning here. You forget the day of the week. You forget what month it is. Your sense of time is measured in how many cigarettes you have left and how long it's been since someone collapsed from exhaustion. Some of the blokes keep track. Others don't bother. One guy carved days into the butt of his rifle until he lost count. Now he just stares at the marks like they mean something. They don't. You start to understand why no one talked about this back home. Not because it wasn't important, but because it wasn't something you could explain without dragging people into the mud with you. This isn't the kind of war you brag about. There are no dramatic charges, no glory shots for the newspapers. Just the slow, grinding erosion of everything soft inside you. And you're not even halfway up the range. The jungle's not done. It's just getting warmed up. You might have imagined, back in training, that the army would equip you properly. That someone, somewhere, had tested the gear before handing it out. Maybe they'd asked, will this hold up in torrential rain? Will this tear the skin off a man's back after 7 hours on a vertical slope? Will this backpack become a personal prison made of straps and bad decisions? Turns out no. No one asked those questions. Or if they did, they were quickly ignored by someone higher up the chain of command who had never seen a jungle and thought Papua New Guinea was a holiday resort. The result? You got handed gear that barely worked in a warehouse, let alone on the Kokoda Track. Let's start with your pack. It's canvas, heavy, supposedly waterproof, in the same way paper is cut resistant. The moment it rained, and it rained immediately, it soaked through. Everything inside? Wet. Your socks? Wet. Your spare shirt? Wet. Your rations? You guessed it, wet. The pack straps? Thin canvas and leather, designed to dig directly into your shoulders and rub your collarbones raw. By day 2, you had open sores. By day 5, those sores had names and personality traits. The pack wasn't just painful, it was a liability. You fantasized about throwing it into the nearest ravine every time you tripped over a root. Your uniform didn't fare any better. Designed for desert conditions, it was made of thick, coarse wool. Yes, wool, in a tropical jungle. Wearing it felt like walking through a sauna wrapped in steel wool and shame. It held moisture like a sponge, and dried at roughly the same speed as a wet corpse buried in a swamp. You chafed everywhere. Armpits, inner thighs. Places you didn't even know could chafe. After a few days, your body looked like it had been sandpapered by someone with a grudge. The shirt had buttons, if they hadn't popped off. The trousers had drawstrings that never stayed tight. And the moment you tried to roll up your sleeves or adjust your waistband, you heard the unmistakable rip of stitching failing under pressure. You weren't just sweating through your clothes, you were watching them fall apart in real time. Now the boots. Oh, the boots. Whoever designed them must have actively hated feet. They were leather, stiff, poorly ventilated, and as waterproof as a sieve. The soles were smooth, with the grip of a freshly waxed floor. On steep, muddy inclines, they became miniature sleds. Your ankles bent, your toes jammed, your heels bled. Blisters became routine, then evolved into full-on skin separations. Your feet weren't just uncomfortable, they were rotting. You started to understand why trench foot was such a big deal in the last war. This wasn't just discomfort, it was structural failure of your entire lower body. Socks, issued in limited pairs, mostly cotton, which meant once wet, and again always, they became foot bandages soaked in fungal broth. You try to dry them at night by hanging them near your tiny smoke-choked fire. Sometimes they steamed. Sometimes they just got smokier. Eventually, you gave up and put them on wet, because cold feet were slightly less awful than walking barefoot through a jungle full of centipedes. Your webbing, designed to carry gear like magazines, grenades, and water bottles, bounced with every step. The straps slipped, the clips jammed, the pouches collected mud and insects. Nothing sat right. Everything pulled on something else. After a while, you stopped trying to adjust it. It was like wrestling an angry canvas octopus. You just let it hurt you. Let's talk about your water bottle. Standard issue metal canteen, complete with screw cap and false sense of security. It was supposed to hold a day's worth of water. It didn't. It also heated up in the sun, meaning if you left it out, you were sipping lukewarm metallic tea with hints of jungle funk. Cleaning it? Good luck. If the water inside wasn't purified properly, it turned into a portable disease delivery system. Some men tried to boil their water before filling the bottle. Most didn't. You could smell the mistake 2 days later, usually after someone doubled over groaning and started vomiting behind a tree. Rations came in tins. Bully beef, hard biscuits, sometimes powdered milk if the supply god smiled on you. The tins rusted almost immediately. Opening them was an art form involving a bayonet, a flat rock, and prayers. Once open, the contents were greyish, slimy, and suspiciously gelatinous. If you ate too fast, you vomited. If you ate too slow, flies got there first. Most of the time you ate in silence, chewing through something that had the flavour of old socks soaked in tallow. There were knives, of course, but nothing sharp. Just dull bayonets that served mostly to pry open tins or dig a new latrine when the last one got flooded. Pocket knives were a luxury. If yours was sharp enough to cut rope or slice bread, you became instantly popular, until it went missing. Then you became suspicious. Rain gear? Hilarious. You might have been issued a poncho, or a ground sheet, or something described as water resistant, which actually meant lightly absorbs the first 10 gallons. After that, it was a flag of surrender. Rain soaked you no matter what. You got used to being wet. Being dry became a myth, a memory, a concept from a former life. Communication equipment was worse. The radios barely worked in open terrain. In dense jungle, they didn't work at all. You relied on runners. Men who literally sprinted through the jungle to deliver handwritten messages. Half the time the messages were wrong. The other half, the runner didn't make it. He tripped, got lost, or just didn't come back. No one blamed them. The jungle ate people. Medical kits were a joke wrapped in canvas. A few bandages, some iodine. Maybe a couple of pills that may or may not have expired before the depression. If you got a serious wound, you were done. Infection set in fast. Antibiotics were scarce. The medics did their best, but their best was often shouting for morphine while trying to cut away necrotic tissue with a knife they'd just wiped on their sleeve. You saw what happened when someone got a jungle ulcer. It wasn't pretty. It didn't end well. Even ammunition was unreliable. The humidity got into everything. Bullets corroded. Magazines jammed. If you dropped a clip in the mud, that was it. Sometimes the rounds didn't fire at all. Click. Nothing. You'd cycle the bolt, try again, and hope it worked before the guy shooting at you got his aim sorted. There were days when you trusted your bayonet more than your rifle. Not because it was better, just because at least it didn't have moving parts. You carried it all anyway, because you had to. Your entire life was in that pack. Your tools, your food, your last clean sock. If something broke, you didn't replace it. You adapted. Tied it with string. Reinforced it with tape. Stole someone else's. Or just did without. And still, somehow, you were expected to fight. Not just survive, but fight. March uphill, shoot straight, stay alert, keep formation. With blistered feet, a 20-kilo pack, waterlogged gear, and a rifle that barely worked when clean, let alone after 3 days of crawling through wet underbrush. The jungle laughed at your gear. You could hear it in the rustling trees and the way your boots slid sideways into another puddle of despair. Every strap that snapped, every button that popped, every pouch that dumped its contents into the mud, it all added up. The jungle wasn't just an enemy, it was an audience, and it was enjoying the show. You weren't a soldier anymore. You were a pack mule with a helmet, a walking pile of damp fabric and half-functioning equipment dragged forward by orders and adrenaline. And the worst part, you were still expected to win. The march never stops. Not really. You move, rest, move again, and maybe sleep for a few hours somewhere between a rock and a puddle of yesterday's sweat. But you're never off duty. Your boots, what's left of them, are still tied to your feet, assuming the laces haven't rotted away. You haven't taken them off in days because you're scared of what you'll find underneath. And you should be. One bloke took his boots off, and half his skin came with them. His foot looked like it had been boiled. Uphill is the default setting here. You're either going up, or you're lying about being at the top. The Kokoda Track isn't just steep, it's punishing. A vertical nightmare carved through jungle by terrain that doesn't believe in mercy or level ground. Every ascent is slow and shaky. Mud underfoot, roots across the trail. Nothing solid. You're dragging yourself upward, one miserable step at a time, breathing like someone just shoved a wet rag down your throat. Sometimes you use your hands. Actually, most of the time. The slope gets so steep you're crawling, climbing, grabbing tree trunks and vines, just to stop from sliding backwards into the poor bastard behind you. And that bastard? He's cursing you, because now he's got your mud in his eyes, your gear in his ribs, and your footprint on his hand. No one's clean. No one's dry. Everyone's just trying not to vomit from the effort. Your pack still weighs the same. It doesn't matter that you're eating the rations, drinking the water, burning through supplies. It somehow stays heavy. Heavier even. Like it's absorbing the humidity and growing. Every step, your shoulders scream. Your lower back pulses. The straps dig deeper. It feels like you're being slowly crushed by your own survival. Food is running low, has been for days. You're down to half rations, maybe less. A few hard biscuits, powdered tea, a scrap of salty meat you can't identify and probably don't want to. You chew slowly, not because you're savouring it, but because you're trying to convince your body it's eating more than it is. Hunger has moved past discomfort. It's now just a dull ache behind your ribs that whispers constantly, more, please, anything, and yet you keep going. Starving, soaked, shaking, you go. Because there's nowhere else to go. You can't turn back. You can't sit down for long. If you stop, you seize up. If you lie down, you might not get up again. So you keep walking. One boot in front of the other. Or what used to be a boot. Some guys are barefoot now. Not by choice. Their footwear disintegrated days ago. Turned to leather soup in the rain. They wrapped rags around their feet. Used strips of uniform. Anything to create a barrier between skin and the jungle floor. But the jungle doesn't care. Sharp stones, twisted roots, and jungle rot cut through everything. Your soles become one open wound. Every step stings. Every toe is raw. You're limping, even if you don't notice it anymore. Everyone is. Occasionally, someone collapses. Full stop. Falls face first in the mud and doesn't move. Not from enemy fire, just from being used up. You give them a minute. Maybe someone pours water on their face. Maybe they whisper something. Maybe they're carried to the side. Or maybe you all just step around them because no one has the strength to help anymore. You want to feel bad about it, but the part of your brain responsible for guilt is too hungry to function. You ration everything. Food, water, movement. You even ration hope. Save it for later. You need some left over in case things somehow get worse. Marching downhill isn't easier. It's worse. Your legs are jelly, your balance is gone, and the trail turns into a water slide covered in rotting leaves and broken soles. You fall more going down than going up. Knees buckle. Ankles twist. One guy slid 10 meters down a slope and landed in a creek full of animal droppings and broken branches. He got up, laughed for a second, then threw up and passed out. No one talked about pace anymore. You moved when you could, how you could. Your squad wasn't in formation. It was scattered, strung along the trail like laundry left out in the rain. Everyone separated by distance, silence, and exhaustion. The only time people group up is when someone thinks they heard something. Then it's weapons up, eyes wide, hearts pounding. For 30 seconds, you remember you're in a war. Then nothing happens. And you keep walking. You barely speak. When someone does talk, it's short. Mostly to ask for water. Or to warn about a leech. Or to curse the sky, the ground, the boots, the trail, the officer who told you this was strategic. Jokes have stopped. Morale is a myth. The only thing keeping people moving is muscle memory and the fear of dying face down in the mud without anyone noticing. The jungle doesn't help. It's not just wet and hot. It's oppressive. You feel it pressing on your chest as the air is thick with spores, heat, smoke from a nearby fire someone tried to light with damp matches and pure rage. Your lungs feel sticky. Your breath comes in short, wheezing gasps. There's no breeze, no relief. The only time the air moves is when a bird screeches past your ear and makes your heart lurch. Because for a second, you thought it was incoming fire. You start talking to yourself. Not full conversations, just fragments. Little words to remind yourself you're still here, still upright, still one of the lucky ones. You've stopped thinking about tomorrow. You've stopped thinking about last week. Time is now. And now is one endless hill. Leadership's no better off. The officers up front are just as miserable. They don't look back. They don't want to see what they have turned into. A line of mud-soaked skeletons moving through vines with rifles and 1,000-yard stares. Orders are given in grunts. Directions or hand signals. No one wants to waste energy on unnecessary speech. You learn more from someone's eyes than their mouth. Every now and then, you get a glimpse of something beautiful. A distant mountain peak. A sunrise through the canopy. A strange bird with colour so bright it doesn't belong here. For half a second, you remember there's a world beyond this hell. Then you look down at your filthy hands, your infected arm, and the mud in your boots. And it all fades. You haven't written home. Maybe you tried, but the paper turned to mush in the rain, and the pencil snapped, and honestly, what were you even going to say? Dear Mum, I'm starving, bleeding, and I think my feet are dead. Hope the garden's nice. No, you don't write. You just keep going, because that's what this march is. Misery, uphill, barefoot, starving, and not even halfway to whatever counts as the front line. At this point, you've accepted that food isn't a comfort anymore. It's not a reward, not a moment of peace, not even something to look forward to. It's a chore, a biological requirement. Just one more miserable box to check off between climbing hills, dodging bullets, and bleeding from places you stopped looking at 3 days ago. You open your ration tin like it's a dare. It hisses when the seal breaks. Probably just pressure, maybe rot. The contents don't move. That's a good sign. Unless they're supposed to. It's hard to tell. Labels are gone. Everything's soaked. You reach in with a spoon that used to be clean and scoop out something grey, stringy, and vaguely meat adjacent. Congratulations. That's dinner. Worms? Oh, they're in there. Not always moving. Sometimes dried. Sometimes curled into little protein commas that stare back like they know something you don't. You pick them out at first. Then you stop. They're not the worst thing you've eaten this week. And technically, they're extra calories. You tell yourself that. You tell yourself a lot of things out here. The biscuits are a brick. A genuine construction grade brick. You tap one against your helmet and it rings. Someone says they're meant to last 10 years in storage. You believe it. Some taste like flour. Most taste like floor. If you're lucky, they're just stale. If you're not, they're mouldy. You scrape off the green part. You eat the rest. If it crunches wrong, you stop chewing and hope it wasn't another beetle. Powdered milk comes in a small bag that somehow absorbed moisture before you even opened it. You try to dissolve it in water that already cloudy from iodine tablets. The result is a warm, gritty liquid that smells like old socks and sadness. You drink it anyway. You don't even gag anymore. Your body doesn't have the energy for protest. Sometimes you get jam. A small tin, supposedly fruit-based. You open it with reverence, praying for something sweet. It's thick, dark, and smells faintly of rust. You eat it with your finger, like a caveman eating regret out of a thimble. It doesn't help. But it's not bully beef, so you count it as a win. Speaking of bully beef, also known as corned beef, it's your main protein source. It comes in a square tin. It comes with fat. It comes with questions. It tastes like salty regret and smells like something that's been through multiple wars already. You try frying it once over a small fire made from damp twigs and pure determination. It turns into grey sludge. You eat it anyway. Ration quantity? Laughable. You are supposed to get enough for a day. In practice, you're lucky if it lasts half that. Supply lines are wrecked. Planes can't drop crates through the canopy. Porters are doing their best, carrying heavy sacks of gear up mountain trails that chew through boots and human joints like they're snacks. By the time the rations reach you, they've been soaked, dropped, or half-eaten by rats. One guy opened a tin and found teeth marks. Not his. Water's no better. You collect it from streams when you can find them. Purify it when you remember. Mostly, you just hope. Your stomach's already angry, so what's one more parasite? You boil it in battered tins or cups blackened with soot and cracked from being dropped too many times. The taste is part iodine, part jungle. Sometimes you swear it smells like leeches. You drink it anyway. Tea is a lifeline. When someone pulls out a soggy paper pouch and lights a fire, everyone gathers. It's not good tea. It's weak, bitter, barely warm. But it's routine. It's a pause. It's the only thing that still tastes vaguely human. You hold the tin in your hands like it's sacred. For 5 minutes you're not starving. You're just tired. You savour it. Then you go back to marching. You dream about food. Not meals, flavours. A cold apple. A piece of toast. Butter. The crunch of anything that wasn't soaked in swamp water or wrapped in canvas. You remember the sound of bacon in a frying pan. The smell of bread. They haunt you. And then you wake up, hungry and damp, to the sound of someone opening another tin of something that expired before you were born. And even when you're not eating, you're thinking about eating. You ration everything. Not just your food, but your hunger. You tell yourself you're not that hungry, that you'll eat at the next rest stop, that maybe someone's getting a fresh supply soon. You lie to yourself bite by bite. The officers don't get extra rations. That's supposed to make you feel better. It doesn't. They're starving too. You see it in their faces. Hollow cheeks, slow movement, barked orders delivered with just enough energy to sound authoritative. They're dying at the same pace you are, just with nicer watches. And then there's the jungle. It never stops offering you things. Strange fruits, shiny berries, mushrooms that glow in the dark. Some men take the risk. Some get lucky. Others hallucinate for 2 days and have to be tied to a tree so they don't wander into enemy territory trying to kiss a tree frog. Local food, you've seen it, carried by the fuzzy-wuzzy angels, native Papuans helping with supply and evacuation. They eat sweet potatoes, yams, sometimes roasted greens. It smells amazing. You'd trade your rifle for a hot plate, but you don't ask. They need it more than you. Besides, your stomach isn't ready for real food anymore. It's forgotten how to process flavour. There's talk of a supply drop. Someone says the planes are coming. You don't look up. You've heard that before. You won't believe it until the crates hit the ground. And when they do, you run. Everyone runs. Even the sick. Even the barefoot. You sprint through mud and roots, because the first hands in the crate get the best stuff. Extra biscuits, dry matches, real chocolate, not much, but enough to fight for. And sometimes the crates miss, drop miles away, or shatter on impact, or get snagged in the trees. You find a parachute once tangled in a canopy. Nothing salvageable, just scraps of canvas and dreams. So you go back to your tin, back to your biscuit, back to your belly that stopped growling because it gave up hope. You chew slowly, you swallow, you sip your bitter tea. You tell yourself you'll eat more later. But there is no later. Just the jungle. Just your gear. Just another hill. And another tin full of worms that taste almost like victory. You've stopped checking the sky. It doesn't matter what it looks like. Blue skies mean heat stroke. Dark clouds mean landslides. Mist means you're lost. Rain? That's the default setting. It's not if it rains, it's how badly. The Kokoda Track doesn't do weather, it does punishment in atmospheric form. When it's hot, it's the kind of heat that makes your brain fog over. You sweat before you stand up. You're already dehydrated before you even touch your gear. The sun finds every gap in the canopy and focuses directly on you, like it's holding a personal grudge. You try to cover up, but every layer traps more heat. Your shirt turns into a personal greenhouse. The air doesn't move. Your lungs fill with steam. Your skin prickles with the threat of heat rash, then delivers. You drink water constantly, but it doesn't help. It just leaks out of your pores the moment it goes in. Salt crusts form on your uniform like you've been baking in your own misery. You try to sit down, catch a breeze, but there is no breeze. Just hot, damp stillness and the faint smell of mildew cooking on your body. But just when you think you've adjusted, The heat disappears, and here comes the rain. Not a drizzle. Not a gentle shower. This is rain that pounds like artillery. It hits the leaves, the ground, your helmet. It floods the track in minutes. Everything becomes slippery. Routes you trusted betray you. Stones vanish under rushing water. The trail itself starts to dissolve. Your feet sink into mud that rises to your shins. You slip, you fall, you stand up, and it's still raining. It hasn't stopped. It never stops. Your gear, soaked. Your rations, soggy. Your matches, dead. Even the waterproof stuff stopped pretending 2 days ago. The rain finds its way through every seam, every fold, every excuse. You've wrung your clothes out so many times that they gave up absorbing water. Now they just stay wet as a lifestyle. Tents are pointless. If you have one, it leaks. If you don't, good luck sleeping with a poncho over your face, hoping a frog doesn't crawl down your shirt in the middle of the night. The ground beneath you is always wet. Your bedding, if you brought any, smells like mould and disappointment. You dream of dry socks. You wake up to a swamp. And then comes the cold. That's the part they never told you about. It's the jungle, right? Should be warm all the time. Wrong. The nights are cold. Miserably cold. You're wet, you're exhausted, and now your teeth are chattering. Your fingers go numb. Your muscles lock. You curl into a ball under your pack, trying to preserve what little body heat you have left. The sweat that soaked you earlier now chills you to the bone. The fire won't light. Or if it does, it smokes like it's mad at you. You huddle around it with a few other miserable souls, trying not to cough as wet leaves sizzle and sputter. It doesn't dry you. It barely warms you. But it's better than the dark, where the wind cuts through the trees like a scalpel. And sometimes, for no reason, the weather just changes mid-step. You're walking through heavy fog, visibility maybe 5 feet in front of you. The next minute, the sun burns through and now you're blind with glare and boiling in your own skin. Then without warning, it starts raining again. Like the sky remembered you exist and decided to remind you who's in charge. Mudslides are real. You've seen one. You heard it first. A low groan like the earth sighing. And then half the hillside gave up and slid away. Trees, rocks, bits of the track, all gone. And anyone standing there, gone with it. 1 minute you were walking behind a guy, the next minute you're staring at empty space and wondering if you just imagined him. And wind. Sometimes it howls through the trees like it's announcing your death. It whips the rain sideways. It knocks branches loose. It fills your ears until you can't hear anything else. You wrap your scarf tighter. Even though it's soaked. Even though it smells like mildew and blood. You just want something between you and the next gust. The thing is, the weather doesn't care that you're at war. It doesn't stop because you're injured. It doesn't let up because supplies are low. It doesn't show mercy when you're trying to bury a friend. It rains during burials. It rains during firefights. It rains while you're vomiting. It rains while you sleep. Or try to. Sometimes the clouds drop so low you feel like you're marching inside a damp blanket. Vision disappears. Your rifle rusts faster. Mould appears on everything. Gear, uniforms, sometimes your hands. You start itching in places that shouldn't itch. You start coughing. You start thinking maybe I'll just lie down for a bit. Maybe the rain will stop. It won't. And if you lie down, you may not get up. The weather is not background here. It's not a setting. It's the enemy. You fight it every step. And you never win. You adapt, sure. You wrap your rations tighter. You punch holes in your boots to let the water drain. You try drying socks by tying them to your rifle while you march, letting them flap in the hot air behind you like surrender flags. It doesn't work. Nothing does. And then, in the rare moments when the rain stops, when the mist clears, when the sun cuts through the canopy and lights up the jungle, briefly, you almost believe it's beautiful. You see the trees sparkle with dew. You hear bird song. You feel warm. And then a storm rolls in from the mountains, drops a fresh curtain of water onto your head and laughs. Because this is Kokoda. And the weather isn't just bad, it's a sadistic god. And you're still just a wet, shivering mortal trying to walk uphill in a world that was never meant for you. By now, your body is a battlefield. Not from bullets, those come later, but from the jungle itself. Your skin is a war zone of rashes, bites, and strange bumps you stopped identifying. You don't remember what it felt like to be clean. You're wet, scratched, sunburnt, chafed raw, and wrapped in wool that's absorbed enough moisture to grow its own ecosystem. And then there are the leeches. You met your first one early on. It was small, maybe the size of a fingernail. It looked harmless. You felt something squishy near your sock and flicked it away. End of story. At least that's what you thought. That was before you realised they don't come one at a time. And they don't give up. Leeches in the Kokoda jungle aren't some novelty wildlife encounter. They're part of the infrastructure, like mud, or rain, or failure. They live in the ground, in the trees, in the puddles. You don't see them until they're on you, and once they're on, they don't let go until they've had their fill, or you physically remove them. They don't sting. They don't bite. They numb the area. That's what makes it worse. You never feel them latch on. You just notice the blood. Maybe it's running down your shin. Maybe it's soaking through your sock. Maybe someone points and says, "Hey mate, your neck's leaking." At first, you react with panic. You tear at your clothes, slap at your arms, dig your fingers into your boots, trying to find the slimy little bastard that's been feeding on you like it's the breakfast buffet. You burn it off with a cigarette, or sprinkle salt, or rip it away and hope it didn't leave anything behind. Then, by day 3, you stop panicking. You just peel them off slowly and flick them into the bush. Some guys get lazy. They let the leeches finish. Free bloodletting, someone jokes. You laugh. Sort of. Then you realise you're lightheaded, and maybe letting 5 leeches snack on your ankle for an hour wasn't the smartest call. You try prevention. Some guys wrap their legs in cloth. Others smear themselves in tobacco juice or mud. Nothing works. The leeches don't care. They drop from branches. They crawl up your boots. They ride in on your gear and find the warmest, soft part of your body to latch onto. You find one between your toes. Between your shoulder blades. One guy found one in his underwear and didn't speak for a full hour after removing it. You bleed for hours afterward. That's the worst part. They inject an anticoagulant. Your blood doesn't clot. So even after the leech is gone, the wound keeps weeping like it's trying to make a point. You press gauze to it. It soaks through. You tie a rag. It leaks. You finally just wrap it in a sock and pretend it's not happening. Infection? Oh, absolutely. Every leech bite is a chance for something worse to move in. Dirt gets in. Fungus. Bacteria from whatever you sat in. You scratch at it. It swells. It turns red. You don't go to the medic. You've already been there 3 times this week, and all he can do is hand you a dirty bandage and a warning about jungle rot. so you walk with a limp and try not to think about it. The leeches aren't just physical, they're psychological. They remind you that this place owns you, that no matter how alert you are, how careful, how experienced, you're still prey. You lie down to sleep and wonder how many are in your blanket. You get up and check your boots, knowing you'll miss one. You sit to rest and feel that telltale squish against your calf. And know, yep, another one. Some men snap. Not from gunfire, not from hunger, from the leeches, the constant violation, the blood loss, the idea that you are food, that your body is just another part of the landscape to be drained and discarded. You see them muttering, flicking at invisible ones, swearing under their breath like the jungle's laughing at them. And maybe it is, because the leeches are always there. Rain or shine, night or day, you stop feeling fear. You start feeling inevitability. Like death, taxes and ration tins filled with slime, the leashes are permanent. You adapt. You bleed. You accept it. You once cared. Now you just carry them. And you keep marching. At first, you think it's just exhaustion. That fog in your head, the aches, the shivers, nothing unusual. You've been marching for days. You've slept in a ditch, eaten out of a rusted can, bled from your feet, and hosted a leech party in your trousers. So yeah, your body's not exactly thriving, but then comes the fever, not regular fever, the kind that wraps around your skull like a hot, wet rope and squeezes until you can't tell if you're sweating from heat or hallucinating from disease. Congratulations. You've won the jungle jackpot, malaria, or dengue, or dysentery. Could be all three. Could be something else entirely. The symptoms blur. Nobody knows. Even the medics have given up trying to diagnose specifics. If it makes you shake, puke, or bleed from an orifice, they call it jungle fever and give you whatever pills are still dry. Malaria comes in waves. You feel fine, relatively. Then 10 minutes later, you're curled up under a poncho, teeth rattling, eyes burning, drenched in sweat, praying the shaking stops before your rifle falls out of your hands. You lie there, body vibrating like a leaf in a storm, clutching your canteen and muttering half prayers between tremors. It passes, eventually, then it comes back, and again, and again. Some guys get it once, some get it weekly, some just stay sick, permanently operating at 50% until they can't stand anymore and collapse into a pile of dirty blankets and regret. The tablets, quinine or atabrine, bitter yellow pills handed out like candy by people who stopped explaining how they work weeks ago. You take them even though they make you nauseous, mess with your vision, and turn your sweat the colour of weak tea. You still take them. Because if you don't, the fever gets worse. And the fever already makes you see things that aren't there. You hallucinate voices, movement, home, that your mother walked by and offered you clean socks. Dengue is different. It starts with joint pain, sharp, deep, like something's trying to unscrew your elbows from the inside. Your eyes hurt, your muscles throb. Your skin feels sunburnt, even in the shade. Then comes the fever. Sudden, burning. You lie there, too weak to lift your head. Every breath a chore. If you manage to stand, your legs tremble like cooked spaghetti. You sit back down. There's nowhere to go anyway. The nickname for it is breakbone fever. You find out why fast. It doesn't kill you, usually. It just makes you wish it would. And then, of course, there's dysentery. The glamorous one. The one that empties you from both ends and leaves you curled next to a shallow hole you tried to dig before your body betrayed you. No privacy, no dignity. Just the sound of someone groaning into the dirt while something foul escapes their intestines at high velocity. Everyone hears it. No one mentions it. They're either next or too far gone to care. Dysentery hits fast. You wake up feeling off. A stomach cramp, maybe. Then your guts twist, fold in on themselves, and you're running, limping, hobbling behind the nearest tree. You don't even get your trousers down all the way. You can't. You just hope you're not standing in someone else's disaster zone. You lose fluid faster than you can drink. Your canteen empties. You steal sips from puddles, because at that point, even swamp water seems better than dying of dehydration. You throw up, you cramp, you fall. The medics, if they see you, give you chalky powder to mix with water. Sometimes they inject you with something. You don't ask what it is. You're too busy trying not to pass out from the stomach pain. The smell is constant, not just yours, everyone's. A trail of rotting sweat, infected wounds, spoiled rations, and open bowels. You learn to breathe through your mouth, until your mouth tastes like metal. Then you stop breathing altogether, and just stare blankly at the dirt, like it might answer your questions about why this is happening. Hygiene? Theoretically, it exists. You are told to wash your hands, clean your mess tin, boil water. But the soap's gone, the water's dirty. Your fingernails are black and chipped. Your toothbrush fell into a ditch last week, and you didn't bother retrieving it. The inside of your mouth tastes like boiled canvas and spoiled tin meat. You don't care. You haven't cared in days. Even cuts go wrong. A scratch on your forearm becomes an oozing crater. A blister on your heel becomes a festering abscess. You try to keep wounds clean, but clean doesn't exist. Not here. The air is filled with bacteria. The mud is a breeding ground for everything microscopic and malicious. Your body's a sponge for infection. You get trench foot, not in a trench. Just from being wet, non-stop. Your skin goes soft, then white, then grey, then it splits. Every step tears something open. The pain's not sharp. It's dull, throbbing, permanent. You wrap your foot in whatever fabric you can find. Old shirts, a piece of bandage you pulled from someone who didn't need it anymore. You limp, you mutter, you march. Nobody looks good. The men around you are skeletons wrapped in wet fabric and disease. Sunken eyes, pale skin, lips cracked from dehydration. Everyone's losing weight, everyone's losing hair. One guy looked at his reflection in a puddle and didn't recognise himself. He laughed, then he cried, then he passed out. You still carry a rifle, you still wear your helmet, but you're not a soldier anymore. You're a disease vector with a weapon, and you're expected to fight like that, to hold a line, to charge a ridge, to fire straight when your vision blurs and your hands won't stop shaking. Rest doesn't help. Sleep is shallow, interrupted. You wake up soaked in sweat, clutching your rifle, heart racing from dreams about being buried alive in mud and blood and maggots. You cough and taste something metallic. You roll over and hope it was just phlegm and not the start of something worse. And you know what the worst part is? This is normal. You're not special. You're not even unlucky. This is what the Kokoda Track does to everyone. Slowly. Without drama. Without explosions. It just wears you down, cell by cell, until you're a barely functioning host body for 3 kinds of parasite and a fever that's older than modern medicine. Malaria, dengue, dysentery. You don't have one. You have all of them. And the only cure, keep moving. You're 10 days in, maybe 15. Time is a smear of rain, mud, fevers, and half-remembered names. The last good conversation you had was with your own legs, begging them not to seize up during a climb. You haven't heard a working radio in over a week, and you're starting to suspect that command is just a myth designed to make you feel less abandoned. Technically, there's a communication system. Radios, field telephones, runners. Whatever logistics dreamed up back in some office with a polished floor and a chair that doesn't smell like mildew. In reality, you're screaming into the jungle and hoping someone somewhere hears you. The radios don't work. That's not opinion. That's fact. They're bulky, fragile, and allergic to everything the jungle provides. Moisture, mud, and sudden drops down a hill. The antenna is a tangled nightmare. The battery barely holds charge, and the moment you need to send a message, the rain doubles in intensity and turns every frequency into white noise and static. And then there's the terrain. Radio waves need space. The Kokoda Track offers none. You're boxed in by cliffs, canopy, and atmospheric interference that feels like the jungle itself is actively jamming your signal. You twist the knobs, you shout into the mic, and you get static. Maybe the faint hum of someone else's misery, then nothing. Then your operator gives you a blank look and shrugs. That's the full briefing. So you fall back on plan B, runners. Yes, actual human runners. Men given a slip of paper, a direction, and a vague promise that someone at the other end will be waiting to read it. These guys deserve medals, monuments, and probably therapy. They sprint through the jungle with a message wrapped in plastic, dodging snipers, snakes, and sanity itself. Some make it, some don't. Some get turned around and come back to the same position hours later, soaked, breathless, and covered in bruises, holding the exact same note they left with. There's no GPS, no map that hasn't bled ink from the rain. Directions are mostly, take the ridge past the big tree, then follow the creek left until you see a rock shaped like a boot. That rock looks like a dozen other rocks. That tree fell last week. That creek turned into a river overnight and washed half the track downstream. And even if the runner makes it, even if the message is legible and delivered to the right unit, what then? Maybe you get a response. Maybe it arrives a day later, telling you to move to a position you passed 3 days ago, or hold a ridge that no longer exists. Or worse, it says nothing. Just silence. Because headquarters hasn't heard from anyone either. The lines are dead. The staff is missing. The officer in charge got malaria and wandered off into the trees. You try yelling sometimes. Literally yelling. If another section's nearby, within 100 meters, you cup your hands and shout over the wind and the rain. Sometimes they shout back. Sometimes you hear something and can't tell if it's human or just a howler monkey mocking your strategy. One time, you spent 20 minutes shouting for reinforcements, only to realise you were yelling in the wrong direction. No one corrected you. They were too busy trying to light a cigarette under a poncho that smelled like mould and despair. And let's talk about written orders. When they do arrive, they're often illegible. Ink runs. Pages stick together. You get half a sentence and 3 guesses about what flank left, then what not you not own was supposed to mean. You ask your sergeant. He doesn't know either. So you guess, you move, you hope it wasn't a trap, or that you're not now walking into a friendly unit with your rifle raised. Misinformation spreads faster than anything else. Someone says the Japanese were spotted 2 ridges over. Someone else says the same about an hour up the track. Turns out both were wrong. Or right. or partly right before the entire situation changed and nobody told you. Every piece of intel is a rumour dressed in damp trousers. You stop asking questions. You start trusting instincts, your own or someone else's, whoever's still upright and not hallucinating. And then there's the chain of command. In theory, it still exists. You salute. You take orders. But after 2 weeks on the track, everyone's filthy, exhausted and starving. Ranks blur. You don't care who's a corporal and who's a private. If someone has dry socks and a working compass, they're in charge now. Sometimes a higher up appears. Fresh uniform, clean boots. He steps out of a tent and delivers a crisp, confident order about repositioning to a better vantage point. Everyone stares. No one moves. Because that better vantage point is a hill you've climbed twice already. And the last time you got there, it rained for 7 hours and half. The unit came down with dengue. You nod anyway. You follow the order. And you wonder how long before the officer ends up face down in the mud like the last one. There's no protocol for this. No flow chart for communication breakdown due to jungle eating the radio. You adapt. You scribble quick notes on the back of rations boxes. You mark trees with slashes. You use smoke signals if you have dry matches, which you don't. You tap codes on tin mugs, yell codes through cupped hands, and once watched a guy carve a full report into a strip of bark because it was the only thing not soaked into pulp. You've had entire firefights with no idea what anyone else was doing. You just fired where the noise was. You saw muzzle flashes, responded with your own, and hoped whoever you were shooting at wasn't wearing the same uniform. Sometimes you find out later. Sometimes you don't. A name goes unspoken for a few days. Then a helmet shows up on a stretcher. Communication out here is as good as your luck. And your luck ran out 3 days ago. So you keep shouting. Into the rain, into the wind, into the static of a broken radio, and the endless hum of jungle that doesn't care what you want or who you need. Because out here, the only message that gets delivered reliably is you're on your own. By now, you've fought mud, hunger, heat stroke, and your own intestines. You've bled from your boots, slept in puddles, hallucinated your way through a fever, and eaten half a tin of meat that may have been older than the war itself. You're beginning to think that nothing else could possibly make this worse. And then you meet the Japanese. Not over tea, not at a polite distance, not across a table where everyone wears medals and talks strategy. No, your introduction comes in the form of a burst of gunfire from the trees, somewhere up ahead, or maybe off to the left, or maybe behind you, because they're everywhere. And by the time you realise you're in their sights, it's already too late to do anything but hit the dirt and hope your helmet's on straight. Here's the uncomfortable truth no one told you when you boarded the troop ship. They're better at this than you. The Japanese troops in New Guinea have already fought their way across Southeast Asia. They've marched through jungles before. They're experienced, hardened, and, unlike you, not constantly tripping over their own packs while trying to decide if that rash on their thigh is fatal. They're light. They move fast. Their uniforms aren't made of wool. Their boots don't disintegrate in rain. They don't carry 50 pounds of gear. They carry what they need, and they know how to use it. They set up ambushes with surgical precision. You don't see them. You don't hear them. You're just walking along the trail, stomach growling, brain fogged with heat and fatigue. And then someone in front of you drops with a hole in their chest, They know the terrain better. They dig in, they hide, they blend into the jungle like it's a second skin. You're still trying to figure out which way is north. They've already built firing positions on every hill worth owning. They flank you while you're trying to boil water. They retreat before you can hit them. Then they come back at night. And they're not just better prepared, they're better supplied. You watch their wounded being carried away on actual stretchers. You hear stories of Japanese field rations that include pickled vegetables, rice, even meat. Meanwhile, your dinner still has insect legs in it. They have dry uniforms packed in waterproof kits. Your spare shirt turned to mould last week. Their medics have gear. Yours has a can of ointment and a roll of gauze made from dreams. They have mortars. You have mud. They have maps that make sense. You have a sketch someone drew on the back of a biscuit box. You try to radio for support and get static. They call in artillery from a ridge you didn't even know existed. Even when you outnumber them, it doesn't feel like you do. Because they know how to make noise, scatter your lines, and vanish before you can react. You chase ghosts through underbrush. You fire at movement, at shadows, at tricks of the light. You're always late, always reacting, always just behind. Your officers tell you to hold your position. You laugh. What position? The one with the flooded foxhole. The one with the dead tree and the mosquito cloud. The jungle doesn't have front lines. It has confusion. And somewhere in that confusion, the enemy moves like they were born here. You fight anyway. You shoot back. You set patrols. You dig in when you can. Try to form some kind of defence with rotting sandbags and clay that crumbles in your hands. You lay down suppressing fire into the trees and hope it lands somewhere useful. You check your ammo and realise you're running low. Again. There's no room for bravado. No one's charging into glory. You crawl through vines, over corpses, past wounded men moaning into the mud. You move by inches, not because you're cautious, but because your legs won't let you do more. Your muscles ache, your head spins, and you wonder if the figure you just saw 20 metres ahead is another soldier or a hallucination. The Japanese take prisoners sometimes. You've heard what happens. The rumours are vague, but specific enough to make your blood run colder than the jungle night. Some guys say they'd rather eat a bullet than get captured. Some already have. Even their propaganda leaflets are better. Printed on clean paper, dropped in places where you can't miss them. Promises of safety if you surrender. Messages in English. Sometimes with pictures. Meanwhile, the last leaflet you saw from your own side was illegible, soaked through, and wedged inside a box of crushed biscuits. You try not to envy them, but it's hard. They look like they were sent to win. You look like you were sent as a cautionary tale. A bunch of underfed, overworked conscripts fumbling through terrain that eats men for breakfast. And here comes an army that moves like a knife in the dark. Your only advantage? You're angry? You're stubborn? You don't give up. You fall, you bleed, you scream, but you get back up. Because you know what happens if you don't. Because behind you is Australia, your mates, your home, and as broken as you feel, you'll keep fighting just to deny them the satisfaction of walking over your bones. But deep down, in the quiet moments between gunfire and rain, you know the truth. They're better equipped, better trained, and unfortunately, they're also right there. Ammo is life. That's what they told you. And for a while, you believed it. You were issued your rifle, a few bandoliers, a handful of spare mags, and the hollow reassurance that resupply was on its way. You carried those bullets like they were sacred, counted them, cleaned them, protected them from rain the same way you failed to protect your socks. But the jungle doesn't care what you were told. Because here, everything gets soaked, lost, broken, or used up. Fast, now you're low. Not just you, everyone. The guy to your left fired off his last clip 2 skirmishes ago. The guy on your right hasn't even checked his pouch, because he already knows what it'll say. You? You've got a few rounds left. Enough to matter. Not enough to survive a full ambush. You keep patting your pockets like maybe they've multiplied since last time. They haven't. You learned quickly not to fire unless it counted. No warning shots, no bursts into the trees. Every squeeze of the trigger costs you a future you may not get back. You aim. You breathe. You don't miss. Because there's no spare mag waiting in the wings. No airdrop coming with boxes of clean, dry rounds wrapped in patriotism. The last drop scattered its load half a ridge away and got eaten by the jungle before anyone could recover a thing. Even the rounds you still have might not work. Moisture gets in. The casing corrodes. You chamber one and pull the trigger and hear the sound of betrayal. Click. Nothing. You cycle the bolt again and again until something fires, but now the guy shooting at you already moved, and you're just burning precious metal into foliage. You think about the supply chain, or what's left of it. Somewhere, theoretically, there's a line of porters moving crates up the track, or a mule, or a miracle, but it's all rumours, all delays. The ammo was supposed to arrive 2 days ago, or last week, or before this war even started. No one knows anymore, and asking gets you the same response every time. It's coming. It's not. So you improvise. You pick up discarded mags from fallen men, even if they're covered in blood. Even if you're not sure if the rounds are dry. You clean them with the corner of your shirt, tap the mud out, and slide them into your pouch like currency. You eyeball abandoned rifles like scavengers in a wasteland. You argue over who saw the spare clip first. You carry an extra bayonet now. Not for show, because at some point, it'll be the only thing you've got. The enemy doesn't run out. At least, it never seems like they do. They fire in bursts, coordinated, controlled. They don't waste shots, but they don't hesitate to shoot either. You hear it in the distance, the steady rhythm of rifles that still work. You return fire with whatever's left, each shot a hope wrapped in brass and anxiety. Grenades, long gone. You use the last one to flush a sniper out of a tree 2 hills back. Now you throw rocks, or empty tins, or curses. Anything to make them flinch while someone else reloads their last usable clip. One guy threw a mess tin once, not because it would do damage, just because he had nothing else, and it made a louder sound than despair. You've heard stories of close quarters. When the ammo's out and it's just knives and fists and the weight of desperation. You haven't hit that point yet, but you've seen the looks. The way men grip their bayonets tighter. The way they sharpen sticks and joke badly about spears. You laugh too. Not because it's funny, because the alternative is panic. When the shooting starts, you measure your responses. You fire once, then wait. You make each round count. You don't aim centre mass, you aim for centre soul. You picture each bullet flying like a handwritten letter that says, "Sorry, this is all I had left." The machine guns ran dry days ago. The crew's still there, sitting behind sandbags, pretending to adjust things, just to look busy. One of them's holding an emptied belt like it's a rosary. praying to gods with names like resupply, reinforcements, or just one more box. The officers keep issuing commands like you still have full pouches. Suppressing fire. Hold the line. Cover the flank. You nod, say, "Yes, sir." Then turn to your mate and whisper, "With what?" You've got 1 magazine left. Maybe 7 rounds. You've got a bayonet, a tin of bully beef you could probably use as a club, and a handful of rocks. That's your loadout now. That's your arsenal. One well-placed regret coming right up. At night, you clean your rifle anyway. Ritual, not reality. You disassemble it, dry the parts with a filthy rag, reassemble it with care you wish someone had shown you before this war started. You whisper to it. Maybe it'll feel loved and decide not to jam tomorrow. Maybe. You dream of bullets. You dream of crates full of dry, clean, shiny rounds stacked high and handed out like chocolate. You dream of opening a box and finding it full. You wake up to the sound of dripping water and someone coughing blood into a handkerchief. And through it all, you keep marching. Still armed, still pretending, still soldiering through a war where you might run out of everything. Hope, energy, socks, but you never run out of the ability to regret. And when that's all you have left, you throw it. By now, you've accepted that the jungle is trying to kill you. The rain, the rot, the insects, the starvation, the dysentery, they're all part of the package. You didn't expect comfort. You didn't expect victory. But what you also didn't expect was to nearly get shot by someone wearing the same uniform as you. Twice. In the same hour. Welcome to friendly fire. Because nothing says morale boost like taking cover from your own side. It starts with confusion. Always. A shadow moves through the bush. Could be a scout. Could be a Japanese sniper. Could be Corporal Bennett out for a piss. The guy behind you panics, fires a burst into the trees, and suddenly everyone's on edge, pointing rifles at shapes that may or may not be real. And once that trigger gets pulled, good luck calming it down. A few rounds into the underbrush, and now half the platoon is returning fire in every direction, convinced you're under siege, while the real enemy watches from a distance, and wonders if you're just saving them the trouble. The visibility? 0. You can't see 5 meters in front of you without squinting. Everyone's covered in mud, blood, and the exact same shade of jungle green. Helmets are the only clue, and even those disappear under foliage. You want to ID someone? Good luck. There's no time to ask for a password when you're knee-deep in a creek and someone's running toward you holding a weapon. There's a guy you knew, Tomlin, nice enough, talked about his fiancée back home like she was carved out of moonlight and loyalty. Took a bullet to the shoulder from a nervous private during a night patrol. Right uniform. Wrong angle. He didn't scream. Just dropped. Blood on the ferns. The private cried. No one blamed him. Not out loud. But no one sat next to him at dinner either. Not that there was dinner. Or sitting. And then there's the artillery. The support fire that occasionally shows up when someone with a working radio manages to raise HQ. You think it's a godsend, until the rounds start landing 20 meters short. One explosion took out a forward foxhole dug by your own section. You know this because you helped dig it and watched it vanish in a column of dirt and screaming. Miscommunication, they said. Bad coordinates. Wrong ridge. As if the crater left behind cares what the excuse was. Mortars are the same. Great for softening up the enemy, if the enemy isn't you. One misjudged angle and suddenly shrapnel's flying the wrong way. The medic, when he still had supplies, pulled a jagged chunk of steel out of someone's thigh and muttered "ours" under his breath like it was a curse. And the worst part? You stop being surprised. The first time you hit the dirt because someone on your own side opened fire, it's panic. By the 5th time, it's routine. You hear shots, you wait, you ask, "Ours?" Then you answer yourself with a shrug. Probably, maybe, doesn't matter. B. Orders come down the line, but by the time they reach you, they're vague, garbled, or contradicted by the last 3 commands you received. Advance along the ridge. Hold the ridge. Fall back from the ridge. You're on the ridge. You've been on the ridge. You're not sure if you're supposed to be there or not. You just hope no one else is told to shell it. And when new units rotate in, it gets worse. They're green, clean uniforms, shiny boots. They don't know the track. They don't know your face. And the moment something moves in the shadows, they shoot first. You try waving, yelling. Doesn't matter. Someone panics, and now you're diving behind a tree, while explaining to a guy named Jenkins that he just put 2 rounds through your water bottle. At night, it's chaos. The jungle goes black faster than your morale. You can't light anything. You can't move without snapping a twig or brushing a leaf. One wrong step and someone opens fire. Flashlights don't exist. Passwords forgotten. All you have is your voice whispered into the dark, praying it sounds like someone familiar and not like someone sneaking up to slit a throat. Some units make rules. If it moves at night, it dies. You follow them because the alternative is getting stabbed by a stranger who forgot your name after week 1. One guy rigged a noise trap with a spoon and a string just so he could get 3 minutes of sleep without waking up to a bayonet in his kidney. You'd think the uniforms would help. They don't. Everyone's filthy. Everyone looks the same. Covered in jungle rot and bits of twine and leaves and desperation. You can't distinguish rank, let alone battalion. You just look for eyes that don't want to kill you. And some days, even that's a gamble. Paranoia becomes the new baseline. You check corners for the enemy. You check your 6 for the guy who accidentally shot his own corporal last week. You keep your weapon close, even when pissing, just in case someone decides you're a silhouette worth removing. And when someone finally yells, "Hold your fire," it's usually after 3 people are already down and the guy with the voice of reason is bleeding from the calf because the jungle doesn't wait for bureaucracy. You try to stay sharp. Try to confirm before pulling the trigger. But it's hard when everything's moving, twitching, rustling, and you haven't slept in 2 nights and your buddy's head is still bandaged from a misunderstanding. Your instincts take over. You shoot first. You apologise later. Maybe nobody trains you for this. There's no drill for being mistaken for the enemy by someone who's on their 3rd straight night of fever dreams and hasn't eaten since Monday. You just get used to the idea that survival is partly skill, partly luck, and partly hoping the guy on your flank isn't having a breakdown. And you keep going. You reload, you check your angles, and you start saying things like, "Cover me," with a little less confidence. Because you've seen what that looks like. And sometimes the guy covering you is more dangerous than the one shooting at you. So you stay low, you stay quiet, and you try not to be in the wrong place when your own side forgets what direction they're facing. You finally make it to a position. Not a comfortable one, not a safe one, just a position. Maybe a ridge, maybe a clearing, maybe a hole someone else started digging before they disappeared into the mist and history. This, you're told, is where you're holding the line. This is your new home. Welcome to the Kokoda Hospitality Suite, where the mud is bottomless, the rot is airborne, and the decor screams tetanus. There's no real structure, no walls, no roofs, just trenches, if you're lucky. If not, it's just a shallow scrape in the ground that fills with water faster than you can dig. The moment you stop moving, the jungle begins its reclamation project. The floor becomes sludge. Your boots disappear. You lower yourself into your foxhole, which is really just a puddle with ambition, and try not to think about what's swimming in it. The mud is everywhere. It's in your clothes, your rifle, your food, your teeth. It sticks to your skin in layers, seeps into your pack, and never dries. You wipe your hands on your pants. Doesn't matter. They're made of mud now too. You scratch your face and feel grit under your nails, and start wondering if this is what burial feels like. Slow, wet, gradual. The trenches collapse. Constantly. You dig one side, the other caves in. You reinforce it with branches, logs, whatever junk you can scavenge. It holds for a few hours. Then the rain returns, and suddenly you're up to your knees in the collective misery of everyone who tried to live here before you. Someone mentioned sandbags, and you all laugh because there hasn't been a dry bag in weeks, and the last one was being used to prop up a dying comrade who couldn't stand anymore. Rot is the baseline scent. It's in the air, in the timber, in your own gear. You can smell it before you even stop marching. The stench of wet fabric mixed with sweat, blood, feces, and the slow decomposition of everything soft. A dead animal nearby? Could be. Could also be the guy from C Platoon no one could evacuate when the last assault started. No one talks about it. You just dig somewhere else. You build a latrine, sort of. A hole behind a tree, marked with a stick, maybe. It fills fast. Overflows faster. You stop using it. You just go where you can, when you can. The ground's already soaked in it. You've stepped in worse. You've smelled worse. You are worse. There's no shelter. You rig up a tarp with sticks and prayer. It flaps in the wind like a flag of surrender. Inside, it's still wet. Still cold. The ground underneath is soft and squishy, which feels nice until you realise that's your bed. You lie down in your poncho, hug your rifle, and try to sleep without drowning. Sleep doesn't come easy. Not with the rain hammering the canopy, or the constant whine of mosquitoes around your ears. Not with rats skittering across your chest in the middle of the night, or the occasional groan from a man losing a battle with his own bowels in the next trench over. You don't even flinch anymore. You just shift your weight to the less wet side and pray your boots are still where you left them. The insects never leave. Ants invade your bedding. Spiders dangle from the ceiling of your lean-to like morbid decorations. Something small and quick keeps chewing through your socks at night. You set traps. They fail. You swat. It's endless. Eventually, you stop caring what's crawling on you, as long as it doesn't bite too hard. Rations arrive if the weather holds. If the porters make it. If the Japanese don't cut the line. If someone didn't drop the crate into a ravine. You open the tins with fingers stiff from cold and extract a lump of meat that shivers in its own grease. You eat it. Slowly. Quietly. You share if you must. You don't want to. Hunger erases manners. Cleanliness, non-existent. There's no washing station. You rinse your face in a puddle, spit out the grime, then look down and realise someone else is doing the same in the other end of it. You don't speak. You don't make eye contact. You just nod and go back to scrubbing your teeth with a twig that's probably full of bugs. Infection spreads like rumours. A scratch festers. A cut turns black. Your skin cracks open at the seams. Your hands are always wet. Your feet are falling apart. And your groin. Best not to think about that. You rub ointment on whatever's raw, if you have any. Mostly you scratch, then bleed, then bandage with whatever fabric hasn't already disintegrated. And through it all, the fighting continues. You fire from behind sandbags that slump like wet cake. You aim through the fog and try to see shapes in the mist. You crouch in a trench that smells like sweat and fear and mould, gripping your rifle like a security blanket made of rust and splinters. When it rains, everything floods. Trenches turn into moats. You bail water with your helmet. You watch bullets land in puddles and wonder who they were meant for. You clean your weapon and feel the damp inside the barrel, knowing full well it might jam the next time you really need it. When it's hot, the air cooks you in your own stink. The flies arrive in squadrons, land on everything. Your food, your face, your wounds. They breed in the latrine. They swarm the injured. You wave them away. They come back. You stop waving. There's a man down a line who hasn't spoken in 2 days. Just stares. Doesn't eat. Doesn't move. You think about asking if he's okay. Then you realise the only honest answer is no, and you go back to rearranging the twigs under your poncho. No one smiles. No one jokes anymore. The laughter left with the last dry sock. Now it's just faces, grey and streaked with dirt, eyes sunken, lips cracked, all hunched over in holes pretending to be safe. You write letters when you can. They never sound right. Dear Mum, the trench collapsed again, and I slept in it anyway. Hope you're well. And every day you wake up to the same reality. Mud in your boots, rot in the air, and another hour to dig a trench that will probably collapse by lunch. It's not a base, not a camp, not even a position. It's a waiting room for misery, and you're booked in indefinitely. You used to think sleep was automatic, something your body just did when it was tired enough, like breathing, or bleeding, or blinking against the sweat in your eyes. But out here, sleep isn't a need. It's a rumour, a luxury, something people in beds with pillows and roofs talk about while you're lying in a hole, covered in fungus, wondering if the rustling near your foot is a rat or a rifle being cocked. You lie down because you have to. Not because you're sleepy, but because you physically can't stand anymore. Your legs fold. Your spine quits. You collapse into your dugout, onto wet earth that smells like old leaves and fear, and you close your eyes, hoping your brain doesn't start spinning again. And that's when the real problem begins, because even if your body shuts down, your mind won't. You're wired, buzzing, running on caffeine, adrenaline, and whatever's left of your survival instinct. Every time you drift off, something jerks you back. A drop of water hitting your face, the snap of a branch in the dark, the familiar clink of someone loading a weapon 20 feet away. Could be a mate, could be an enemy. You roll over and listen harder, pretending you're still asleep. Then there's the insects, the buzzing, the crawling, the biting. They find the softest parts of your face and go to work. You swat them in your sleep. Or try to. You wake up scratching something raw. You curse quietly. No one answers. They're all dealing with their own personal wildlife infestation. You try covering your head with a blanket. It's damp. It sticks to your face. You feel like you're suffocating. You throw it off. More bugs. You try using your pack as a pillow. It's lumpy. It smells like feet and despair. But at least it's not the ground. except it's soaked through. You squeeze it and water runs out. You flip it over and lie on the dry side, knowing it won't be dry for long. Then comes the coughing, from somewhere in the trench, or maybe 2 trenches over. Dry at first, then wet, then guttural, then silent. You count the seconds, waiting to hear if it picks back up again. It does, but you've lost count, and now your nerves are awake again. Someone nearby is having a dream, or a nightmare. You hear them muttering, then whimpering, then shouting. It wakes everyone. You all sit up, eyes wide, half ready to fire at shadows. He calms down eventually. No one says a word. He doesn't apologise. You don't expect him to. You've been there. And when the night's not loud, it's even worse. The silence creeps in. Thick. Heavy. Unnatural. You listen harder because it can't be real. It never is. You hear your own heartbeat. Then, somewhere deep in the dark, something moves. It's probably nothing. Unless it's something, you don't sleep after that. Daylight doesn't help. You think maybe you can nap while the sun's out. You can't. The heat hits you like a punch. Your hole turns into a sauna. Your skin starts itching. Your uniform glues itself to your back. Flies show up and take interest in everything you own, including your mouth. You try to rest your head on your arm, but it's sunburnt and sticking to the mud. And when you finally do nod off, somewhere between exhaustion and unconsciousness, it lasts 10, maybe 20 minutes. You wake up confused, panicked, not knowing what day it is, or whether the shooting stopped or just hasn't started again yet. You grab your rifle. You check your ammo again. You feel the crust around your eyes and realise you drooled in your sleep, and now your cheek is stuck to your sleeve. There's no such thing as deep sleep anymore, just micro rest. Your brain breaks the day into tiny slots and fills them with flashes of dreams and noise, and the ghost memory of your name being shouted. You see your house, then your mates, then your boots filling with water. Then you wake up and it's still raining. Some men take shifts. 2 hours down, 2 hours up. It works in theory, but everyone's down. Everyone's up. Everyone's too tired to remember what time it is. Watches don't matter. The jungle doesn't care. The only real clock is the next ambush. And even if you do manage to fall asleep, proper, full-body, head-lolling sleep, it never ends well. You wake up cold, wet, startled. Maybe someone shook you. Maybe something bit you. Maybe you just jolted awake from a dream where you were drowning in mud and woke up to find it wasn't a dream. Your legs are still numb. Your back's locked. You stand and stretch and feel a crunch in your spine that wasn't there before. You'd kill for 5 hours. You'd trade your rifle for a pillow. But even if someone dropped you into a featherbed tonight, you probably wouldn't sleep. Not well, not peacefully. Because you've taught your body that rest equals danger. That stillness equals exposure. That closing your eyes means opening your soul to every sound, every movement, every breath of wind that could carry death with it. The jungle rewires you. Sleep is for us after the war, after the march, after everything else is over. But after is a long way off, and you're not even sure if it's real. So you sit up, you rub your eyes, you slap a mosquito. You stretch your aching arms and wonder if today's the day your body finally runs out of fumes. Then you stand and start walking again. Because sleep, out here, isn't rest. It's just the thing that happens between nightmares. You knew deep down that if you got hit out here, there wouldn't be a clean white hospital waiting for you. No crisp bed sheets. No soft-spoken nurse gently adjusting your bandages while piano music plays in the background. What you get instead is a clearing, a tarp, and a man with haunted eyes holding a rusted scalpel in one hand and a stick of chewing gum in the other. Welcome to the Kokoda Frontline Medical Experience, the jungle's answer to healthcare. Less Florence Nightingale, more fever dream with forceps. You stagger into the aid post half-conscious, bleeding from somewhere beneath your shirt, and get waved onto a mat made of rotting canvas. You lie down because standing hurts too much, and no one offers help. You're not the only one bleeding. You're just the one bleeding now. Give it 10 minutes, and someone else will be on this tarp too. Maybe worse. The medic isn't a doctor. He was a student. Or a pharmacist's assistant. Or just the guy who didn't flinch when the training dummies sprayed fake blood. He's got a tin box full of supplies that was full a month ago, and now rattles like an empty ration tin. Bandages. Gone. Gauze. Mouldy. Painkillers. If he has any left, he's saving them for amputations, and maybe not even then. So he does what he can. He looks at your wound and grunts. If it's a clean bullet hole, you're lucky. A through and through means less digging. If it's still in there, well, now comes the fun part. No anaesthesia. No antiseptic that hasn't been diluted to the colour of bog water. Just you, a rag to bite on, and the distant sound of someone else screaming in a tone you now understand too well. He opened you up with a knife that was cleaned with river water and wiped on his sleeve. He digs in. You hold still, or you don't. Doesn't matter. He keeps going. You think about things you'd rather be doing, like walking through a minefield or fighting a crocodile with a spoon. Then the bullet's out. Maybe. Or he says it is. You can't see. You're too busy staring at the clouds, pretending they don't look like faces. He stitches you up with thread that's been reused more times than anyone's willing to admit. The needle is dull. It pulls, not pierces. You feel every pass. You smell your own blood, mixed with sweat, mixed with jungle rot. He ties it off with a knot that might hold, then slaps a piece of cloth over it and tells you not to move much. You try to sit up. He tells you to lie back down. You ask how long you should rest. He laughs, not kindly. You're back on your feet in an hour, maybe less. There's no room to keep people here. No beds, no tents. Just mud, bodies, and a constant flow of new problems arriving faster than old ones can be buried. If you're lucky, your wound heals. If you're less lucky, it gets infected. Swells. Pus, smell, fever. The medic gives you powdered sulphur if he has it, sprinkles it like fairy dust and crosses his fingers. You start shivering. Your lips go dry. Your tongue swells. You stop caring what day it is and start bargaining with gods you don't believe in. Some don't make it. They die slow, quiet. In the corner of the post, under a blanket that used to be olive green, but now just looks like a biohazard. No one says anything. There's no ceremony. Someone takes their dog tags. Someone else checks their pack for anything usable. Then it's on to the next patient. And then there's the fevers, the tropical plagues, the shaking, sweating, vomiting mess that turns strong men into pale bags of bones. Malaria, dengue, typhus. The medic doesn't test for them. He just gives you a pill if he has it. Some yellow, some chalky, some so bitter you vomit them back up. You take them anyway, because the alternative is the hallucinations, the spiralling thoughts, the full-body meltdown that turns a man into a muttering ghost. Dental care. Don't even ask. If a tooth goes bad, it stays bad until it falls out, or you pull it yourself with pliers and a prayer. One guy tried tying a string to a tree and yanking. It worked. He passed out anyway. You didn't see him for 3 days. And then there are the amputations. Yes, they happen. No, you don't want to be there for one. The knife comes out. A saw, if they have one. They give you a stick to bite. Maybe a swig of whatever alcohol someone stashed in their mess tin. Then they cut. The screaming starts and doesn't stop. Sometimes, even after it's over, you hear it. Long after the bandages are soaked through and the limb's been buried behind the latrine. Prosthetics? You're hilarious. Even mental wounds get triaged with nothing but shrugs. A man goes quiet, won't speak, won't eat. He stares at nothing. Someone nudges him. Nothing. Someone yells. Still nothing. The medic crouches, looks him over, and says the same thing he says to everyone. Give it time. And then the guy gets moved, because there's a real casualty coming in. A man whose leg is only mostly attached. You start learning to treat yourself. A strip of cloth for a tourniquet. A sock for a dressing. Cigarette ash to dry a wound. You dig out splinters with a bayonet tip. You hold someone down while their blister is lanced with a safety pin. You whisper that it'll be fine, even when you both know it won't. You pray for the miracle of evacuation. A stretcher party. A porter team. An actual hospital back in Moresby, where they have clean sheets and morphine. Maybe even a real doctor. But the jungle eats those hopes. The tracks are too rough. The mud too deep. The fighting too close. So you stay, broken, patched, holding together with friction and willpower. Out here, medical care is just whatever someone can do with half a first aid kit, a rusty blade, and enough grit to ignore the screaming. And when none of that works, they cover your face, take your boots, and dig another hole. Next. You remember a time when resupply meant trucks, crates, rows of clean gear, someone handing you new socks, dry rations, maybe even a chocolate bar. That idea died somewhere around day 5 on the Kokoda Track. Out here, the only supply line is the sky, and the sky does not care about your suffering. Planes were supposed to save you. Drop food, ammo, medicine, morale, that was the pitch. Just hold a position, they said. Supplies are on the way. But that assumes a few things, like good weather, clear skies, functional maps, ground markers that don't get washed away in the rain, and pilots who can see through clouds, dodge anti-air fire, and somehow spot a target the size of a postage stamp in a sea of identical trees. None of those things are happening. The jungle has a way of swallowing signals, and your drop zone is wherever the pilot guesses you might be. You lay out panels made from ponchos and hope the wind doesn't blow them into the next valley. You light fires, if you have anything dry enough to burn. You wave flags, you scream, then you listen. Sometimes you hear the distant drone of an engine. It circles. It fades. Maybe it drops something. Maybe it doesn't. Sometimes they hit the mark. Rarely. Usually the crates land half a kilometre away. Down a ravine. In a swamp. In enemy territory. You hear them crash through the canopy like wooden meteors, then silence. A silence filled with everyone silently drawing straws to see who's going to climb down and maybe not come back. You get there, if you're lucky, and find the crate has burst open. Half the rations are smashed, the tins are dented, the ammo's wet. The medical kit looks like it was packed by someone with a grudge. One time, the crate was filled with winter gear. Socks, gloves, jackets. A thoughtful delivery for the tropics. One guy joked that the planes must be dropping the good supplies to the Japanese. You all laughed, quietly, because you weren't sure if it was actually a joke. Other times, the planes miss entirely. You hear the rumble, run to your drop zone, stare at the sky, and nothing. Just blue. Then clouds. Then silence. Maybe they dropped the goods 3 valleys over. Maybe they turned back. Maybe they got shot down. Doesn't matter. You're still hungry, still bleeding, and still staring at your last cracker, like it's a family heirloom. Weather is the real enemy. The fog rolls in fast, thick as wool, and stays for hours. Days. The pilots can't see a thing. Visibility drops to 0. They delay. They reroute. Or they just don't come. You sit in your hole, chewing the corner off a stale biscuit, listening to the storm roll in, wondering if there's any food left to burn for warmth. And then there's the terrain. No flat ground, no fields, no wide open spaces for landing or dropping anything safely. Just ridges and cliffs, and tree cover so thick it eats sunlight. The best you get is a cleared patch of mud the size of a tennis court, and even that's likely half flooded and surrounded by vines waiting to trip anyone who runs for the drop. The logistics officers back at HQ send you crates like they think gravity is a friendly partner. They don't strap things properly. Or they forget to attach parachutes. So when supplies do arrive, they arrive shattered, scattered, or embedded 2 feet into the earth like a bad joke. One crate landed on a latrine. You didn't even care what was in it. You just moved the toilet and started digging. Sometimes the Japanese get to the drops first. They see the parachutes, same as you. But they're closer. They're faster. And they don't ask permission. You arrive to find a torn crate, a few empty tins, and maybe a boot print just to rub it in. You start getting creative. Trading. Swapping socks for ammo. Soap for food. Cigarettes for painkillers. Everything becomes currency. If you find a working tin opener, you guard it like it's gold. If someone has a working lighter, he's king. If you have extra food, you sleep with it under your shirt. You stretch rations until the cans are clean. You scrape every last bit. Powdered milk becomes soup. Dry biscuits become spoons. You eat things you wouldn't feed a dog back home. And when the drops do go right, it's like Christmas. If Christmas came in the form of 3 dented boxes of bully beef and a handful of cartridges with half the powder missing. And when the planes don't come at all, which happens more often than not, you don't even get angry anymore. You just nod. Of course they didn't. Why would they? You look at the sky like it personally betrayed you. And maybe it did. You blame the rain, the wind, the mountain, the planners, the war, yourself. But mostly you blame the planes. Because they could fix this. They could feed you, arm you, help you. But they don't. Not reliably. Not consistently. Not when you actually need them. They say help is coming, that the next drop will be better, that someone's working on it. But out here, all it means is, maybe, eventually, something will fall from the sky that doesn't kill you. Until then, you wait and chew regret like it's a ration. You didn't think it was possible. Trench foot was supposed to be a European thing. Muddy battlefields, cold water, frozen socks, that sort of mess. Not this. Not here. Not in a jungle where it's 30 degrees by breakfast, and you sweat through your clothes before lunch. But here you are, sitting in your hole, peeling off your sock, and staring at what used to be your foot. Now it's grey, swollen, spongy, and smells like something that died, got bored, and died again. Congratulations, you have trench foot in the tropics, because of course you do. It starts quiet, just a bit of itching, maybe some tingling around the toes. You think it's a bite, or just irritation from the heat. You ignore it. Everyone ignores it. Your boots are always wet. Your socks are always wet. Your skin never dries. It's just part of the daily misery cocktail. You slap some powder on it, if you have any, and keep marching. Then the tingling turns into pain. A deep ache in your heel, like someone's driving nails through the bone every time you step. Your toes feel numb. Not cold, just gone. Like they checked out for the day. You pull your boot off and the sock comes with it. Fused to the skin by pressure, sweat, and time. When it peels back, so does a chunk of skin. It sloughs off like wet newspaper. You stare at it, not shocked, just tired. Another thing broken. Add it to the list. The medics try to help. They tell you to dry your feet, elevate them, change socks. You laugh. Where are these magical dry socks coming from? What part of this hellhole has air circulation? Your feet have been marinating for weeks. They're pickled. You could bottle them and sell them as a biological weapon. It's not just you. Half the platoon has it. You all compare feet like old men at a clinic. Who's got the worst blister? Who lost a toenail? Who can still feel their big toe? Some guy has a trench so deep in his heel it looks like it was carved out with a spoon. He walks anyway, limping, quiet. Because if you complain too loudly, they might pull you off the line. And no one wants to be the guy who couldn't hack it. You wrap your foot in whatever you've got. A sleeve, a strip of blanket. Sometimes nothing. You stuff it back into the boot and wince as the raw skin grinds against wet leather. Then you stand up and march. Because there's nowhere else to go. The pain's constant now. A dull, pulsing throb that rides up your calf and into your spine. You can't bend your ankle properly. Every step is a gamble. The ground shifts, your balance goes, and down you go, face first into another puddle of mosquito eggs and old regrets. You keep walking, not because you're strong, because there's no other choice. The track winds on, and so do you, dragging 2 sacks of ruined flesh beneath you like rotting anchors. And then comes the rot, real rot. Flesh that starts to smell sweet in the worst possible way. Pink turns grey. Grey turns black. The skin splits. Fluid leaks. You find yourself checking for maggots because someone else found one and now it's all you can think about. You swat at flies around your boots and pretend you're still human. Some men don't make it. Their feet give out. They collapse and don't get back up. Carried out, if they're lucky. Left behind, if they're not. You keep walking past them, because if you stop, you might not start again. And no one wants to be the next body wrapped in a poncho and rolled into a shallow grave with a stick for a headstone. The worst part? You still try to care. You still change socks, even if it's just swapping wet for wetter. You hang them out to dry on branches that never see the sun. You rub your feet with anything. Talc, tobacco, rum, mud. One guy tried rubbing his in boiled tea leaves. Didn't work, but at least it smelled better. Shoes? They're not even shoes anymore. They're shapeless, collapsing leather bags that hold your foot like a loose promise. The soles flap. The stitching's gone. The laces are replaced with string, wire, or stubbornness. You try to patch them with tape, bark, even tin from an old ration lid. Doesn't matter. You're walking on pulp. At night, you sit with your legs out of the trench, dangling in the air, hoping for a breeze. There is none. Just humidity thick enough to drink, and a cloud of mosquitoes eager to turn your exposed skin into a buffet. You slap your shin. You wince. You look down and see that something's oozing through the bandage. You stop looking, and in the morning, you start all over again. Peel off the socks, peel off the skin, clean what you can, rewrap, resign. You're not fixing anything. You're just slowing the decay. You try not to think long term about what happens if it gets worse, if you can't walk, if the rot spreads. You've seen what happens when toes go black, when the smell reaches other people, when the medic starts shaking his head before you even take your boot off. There's a joke. Dark. Like all the good ones. If you can't feel your foot, you're lucky. If you can, you're doomed. You laugh. You limp. Yeah, you adjust your kit and keep moving. Because the track doesn't stop. The war doesn't wait. And trench foot? That's just one more thing trying to kill you, from the ground up. There's no banner. No music. No cheering crowds. No wide-eyed officer shaking your hand and saying you did the country proud. There's just the sound of your boots hitting packed dirt instead of mud, and a voice whispering in the back of your head, "It's over." Or at least, this part is. You reach the end of the Kokoda track, not with a sprint, not even a march, just a slow, lurching shuffle. Your body's a wreck, feet like rotted meat, a gut twisted from weeks of spoiled rations, limbs that feel borrowed. You don't look like a soldier. You look like a scarecrow that fought a fire and lost. No one really says anything. A few nods, a few grunts. Everyone's too tired to celebrate. The jungle doesn't clap. It doesn't send you off with a medal. It just watches. Still. Green. Indifferent. You're told you helped win something. Stopped an advance. Held the line. Delayed the enemy long enough for reinforcements. You nod like it matters. Like the word victory still has weight when your mouth tastes like blood and mould and whatever grew in your canteen during week 3. You try to feel proud, but mostly you just feel here, alive, barely. There's food waiting, or something like it. A pot of rice, some stale bread. You eat it anyway. No one speaks while they chew. A man across from you eats with his eyes shut. Either he's savouring it, or he forgot how to be awake with them open. You watch rainwater run off the tent roof into a bucket and think, that looks clean enough to drink. You do. It's cold, sharp, better than anything you've had in weeks. It tastes like survival. Which, as it turns out, is kind of bland. Someone cracks a joke, it doesn't land. Too soon. Too raw. The laughs you hear are dry, bitter, almost sarcastic. You're supposed to be relieved. You're supposed to be grateful. But all you can think about is who's not here. The guy who took a round to the chest during that ambush on the ridgeline. The kid who slipped and cracked his skull on a wet boulder and bled out in silence. The one who stopped talking and never started again. You think of them when you eat, when you sleep. When someone hands you a clean pair of socks, and you stare at them like they're a relic from a previous life. You change anyway. It feels wrong. Like dressing up for a funeral. Letters are passed around. Some get mail, some don't. You get a note from someone back home asking if you're having a proper meal. You fold it in half and put it in your pocket without reading the rest. You want to write back, yes, that if mould counts. But you won't. You won't write anything for a while. The medics check your feet, your skin, your eyes. They poke. They take notes. You don't answer their questions, just nod, shake your head. You're not sick. You just look like someone who lost a bet to a volcano. They scribble something down and move on. You were hoping for a cure. You get an iodine swab and a pat on the shoulder. You clean your rifle, not because you need to, but because it's the only routine you still trust. Strip, wipe, oil, assemble. Each piece makes sense, nothing else does. Your hands shake, you ignore it. There's a man talking about the future, about being rotated out, about going home. His voice sounds far away. You're not sure if he's real. Someone hands you a cigarette. You light it. Smoke fills your lungs like something familiar, even if it makes you cough. You hold it between two fingers that still smell like earth and blood. You watch clouds move. Rain falls again. Of course it does. It never really stopped. But you're under a tarp now. Dryish. Your boots are off. You have a cup of something warm. This is what peace looks like here. Small, shaky, and soaked. There's no debrief. No ceremony. Just the silence that follows the kind of exhaustion that's buried deep in your bones. You try to sleep, but it's not real sleep. Your body rests, but your head doesn't. You keep hearing the jungle, the whispers, the rustle of leaves that might have been a sniper, the thud of boots that might have been someone falling. You open your eyes every hour just to check if it's really done. And when you wake up, you still feel heavy. Because surviving something like Kokoda doesn't come with a trophy. It comes with questions you don't want to answer. Like why you made it and others didn't. Why some guys got lucky and others got leeches, bullets or fever. You laugh sometimes. It helps. Not much, but it reminds you that you still can. You're told to stand for a group photo. You line up with the others. Skinny, sunken eyes, torn sleeves. The shutter clicks, and for a moment you wonder what people back home will see when they look at it. Heroes? Maybe. Survivors? Definitely. But only you and the jungle know what you left behind out there, and you're not sure you ever really came back. They told you it'd feel better once you got home, that stepping off the ship, breathing dry air, and smelling anything that wasn't rot would flip some invisible switch in your brain and reset things. You made it, they said. You're safe now. You smiled. You nodded. You shook hands. And all the while, something in you stayed crouched in a trench, waiting for the next shot. Home doesn't look the way you remembered it. Everything's too clean, too bright. The streets are dry. The people are loud. They walk with purpose and clear eyes and boots that aren't falling apart. They don't look around when a car backfires. They don't freeze when a branch snaps underfoot. They don't scan rooftops, tree lines, shadows, everywhere you still instinctively watch. You try to sleep in a bed. It feels wrong. Too soft. Too safe. You lie awake listening to the silence and find it unbearable. In the jungle, silence meant danger. Here, it just means you're alone with your thoughts. You fold the pillow in half and wedge it under your head, trying to make it feel like a rock, because that's what your body expects. Still can't sleep. When dreams come, they don't last long. They're hot, frantic things filled with vines and screams and that sticky sensation of sweat mixed with blood. You wake up gasping, drenched, reaching for a rifle that isn't there. You check the door, the window, the closet. Then sit on the edge of the bed until the panic fizzles out into a dull ache somewhere behind your ribs. People ask questions. What was it like? Did you kill anyone? Was it scary? You try to answer. You really do, but the words don't form properly. You talk about the rain, the mud, the leeches. They laugh, not because they're cruel, but because they think you're joking. You're not. You go for a walk and catch yourself avoiding puddles, stepping around shadows, keeping your back to walls. Your hands twitch when someone shouts across the street. You flinch when doors slam. You feel your heart pounding over nothing. Nothing at all. And then there's the guilt. Heavy. Constant. You made it back. Some didn't. You remember every name, every face. The guy who cracked jokes with a fever of 103 before going still. The kid who bled out in a gully and apologised for slowing everyone down. You made it. They didn't. And every breath you take feels borrowed. The army sends a letter thanking you for your service. Your family throws a dinner. You sit through it, smiling, saying all the right things, chewing food you can't taste. Someone mentions the campaign. You raise a glass and mumble, "To the boys?" Then excuse yourself and stand alone outside, staring at nothing, until the wind reminds you you're not back there anymore. At least, not physically. You hear someone talk about moving on, like it's a light switch. Flip it and the memories vanish. You want to believe them, but you still feel the jungle in your bones. Still feel your skin crawl when it rains. Still find dirt under your nails, even when you haven't touched the ground all day. They call it shell shock, battle fatigue. Later, they'll call it PTSD. Right now, it's just what happens when a war ends but doesn't let you leave. You laugh sometimes, loud, too loud, at things that aren't funny. It unsettles people. You apologise. You tell them it's nothing. Just a story from the track. They don't ask for details. You carry your pack differently now. Not because it's heavy, but because something in you says you should always be ready to leave, to move, to run. You check for exits in every room. You scan crowds without realising it. You sleep with the door unlocked, but a chair wedged under the knob, just in case. Some nights, you wake up to the sound of your own voice yelling into the dark. You tell yourself it was a dream. You tell yourself it doesn't mean anything. You go to the sink, drink from the tap, and sit at the table until the sun comes up. You survive again, and again, and again. Because that's what you do now. Survival's a reflex, a default setting. Even if there's nothing left to fight but the ghosts. You don't talk about Kokoda much. Not in detail. People wouldn't understand. The jungle doesn't translate. Not fully. You just say, "It was bad." And they nod. And that's the end of it. But you remember. Every day, every step, every face, every inch of mud and blood and silence. Because you left Kokoda behind, but it didn't return the favour. And that's it. You made it through. Not just Kokoda, this entire retelling of it. If you're still awake, congratulations. Either you're deeply relaxed or just mildly traumatised in a very quiet way. So next time someone romanticises the good old days, or talks about how soldiers were tougher back then, feel free to remember the bit about trench rot, leech roommates, and coughing blood into your only dry sock. Or how victory sometimes just meant walking away with both feet still attached. Thanks for listening to this very boring history. The kind where nothing explodes, no one saves the day in slow motion, and all the heroes just limp home and try to forget. Sleep tight if you can.